Miss Portinari assumed the Lotus position and sent a beam seeking the Dalai Lama, director of the Arisian Liberation Front and inventor of Operation Mindfuck. He immediately sent back an image of himself as a worm sticking his head out of a golden apple and grinning cynically.
"It's finished," she told him. "We saved as many of the pieces as we could, and Hagbard is still struggling with his guilt trip. Now tell us what we did wrong."
"You seem bitter."
"I know it's going to turn out that you were right and we were wrong. I know it, but I can't believe it. We couldn't stand idly by."
"You know better than that, or Hagbard wouldn't have abdicated in your favor."
"Yes, we could have stood idly by, as you did. What Hagbard saw happening to the American Indians, and what my parents told me about Mussolini, filled us with fear. We acted on that fear, not on perfect love, so you must be right and we must be wrong. But I still can't believe it. Why did you deceive Hagbard all these years?"
"He deceived himself. When he first formed the Legion of Dynamic Discord, his compassion was already tainted with bitterness. When I took him into the AA, I taught all that he was ready to receive, but the goose has to get itself out of the bottle. I'm waiting. That's the way of Tao."
"You have that much patience? You can watch men like Hagbard waste their talents and efforts you consider worthless, and creatures like Cagliostro and Weishaupt and Hitler misread the teachings and wreak havoc, and you never want to intervene?"
"I intervene in my own way. Who do you think feeds the goose until it gets big enough to break out of the bottle?"
"You seem to have this particular goose on some very tainted dishes. Why did you never give him any hint about what really happened in Atlantis? Why did that have to wait until Howard discovered the truth in the ruins of Peos?"
"Daughter, my path isn't the only path. Every spoke helps to hold the wheel together. I believe that all the libertarian fighters like Spartacus and Jefferson and Joe Hill and Hagbard just strengthen the opposition by giving it an enemy to fear. But I may be wrong. Someday, one of the activists, such as Hagbard, might actually prove it to me and show me the error of my ways. Maybe the Saures really would have tipped the axis too far the other way if he hadn't stopped them. Maybe the self-regulation of the universe, in which I place my faith, includes the creation of men like Hagbard who do the stupid, low-level things I would never do. Besides, if I didn't stop the Saures, but did stop Hagbard, then I would really be intervening in the worst sense of that word."
"So your hands are clean, and Hagbard and I will carry the bad karma from the last week."
"You have chosen it, have you not?"
Miss Portinari smiled then.
"Yes, we have chosen it, and he will bear his share of it like a man, and I will bear my share like a woman."
"You might replace me soon. The Saurs had one good idea in the midst of their delusions. All the old conspiracies need young blood."
"What really did happen in Atlantis?"
"An act of goddess, to paraphrase the insurance companies. A natural catastrophe."
"And what was your role?"
"I warned against it. Nobody at that time understood the science I was using. They called me a witch doctor. I won a few converts, and we resettled ourselves in the Himalayas before the earthquake. The survivors, having underestimated my science before the tragedy, overestimated it afterward. They wanted my group, the Unbroken Circle, to become as gods and rule over them. Kings, they called it. That wasn't our game. So we scattered various false stories around and went into hiding. My most gifted pupil of all history, a man you've heard about since you were in a convent school, did the same thing when they tried to make him king. He ran away to the desert."
"Hagbard always thought your refusal to take any action at all was because of your guilt about Atlantis. What a terrible irony, and yet you planned it that way."
Gruad, the Dalai Lama, broadcast a whimsical image of himself with horns and said nothing.
They never taught me in convent school that Satan or Prometheus would have a sense of humor.
They think the universe is as humorless as themselves,
Gruad said, chuckling.
I don't think it's as funny as you do,
Miss Portnari replied.
Remembering what I've been told about Mussolini and Hitler and Stalin, I would have intervened against them too, and taken the consequences.
You and Hagbard are incorrigible. That's why I have such fondness for you.
Gruad smiled.
I was the first intervener, you know. I told all the scientists and priests in Atlantis that they didn't know beans, and I encouraged, incited every man, woman, and child to examine the evidence and think for themselves. I tried to give the light of reason.
He burst into laughter.
Forgive me. The airs of our youth always strike us as comical when we get old.
He added softly.
Lilith Velkor was crucified, by the way. She was an idealist, and when my crowd pulled out and went to the Himalayas, she stayed and tried to convince people that we were right. Her death was quite painful.
He chortled.
You are a cynical old bastard,
Miss Portnari said.
Yes, cynical and cold and without an ounce of human compassion. The only thing to be said for me is that I happen to be right.
You always have been, I know. But someday, maybe, one of the Hagbard Chalines might be right.
Yes.
He paused so long that she wondered if he would continue.
Or,
he said finally,
one of the Sowers or Robert Putney Drake. Put down your money and place your bet.